The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Well, you have been busy today, haven't you? A massive row here in America about illegal immigrants coming in across the border from Mexico and children being separated from parents. We'll talk about that this evening. We'll talk about the fact that Woody Johnson, the US ambassador to the UK, has announced that when Donald Trump comes to the UK in mid-July, he is going to meet the Queen, and we will also talk about what happened in the House of Commons today with the government's Brexit legislation. Was it the government avoiding defeat, or is it actually really a victory? And quite frankly, everything to do with Brexit now in the House of Commons is so complicated, you virtually need an interpreter to work out what any of it means. But on the face of it, it's been a pretty good day for Mrs May's legislation. But yeah, I want to focus very much on Woody Johnson's announcement that Donald Trump will meet the Queen. Now, he hasn't announced where, although given this is mid-July, the Queen will probably be in London. So would it be Buckingham Palace? Would it be Windsor? If it was later on, if it was August, my guess is it would have been up in Balmoral. This meeting with the Queen is going to matter to Donald Trump hugely. You know, the one thing we kind of forget about this guy is that his mother didn't just come from Scotland, but she retained her Scottishness throughout her life, going back to the Western Isles every year, spending at least a month a year there. She never lost her Scottish accent, and Donald Trump was brought up to understand that he was half Scottish. He, certainly in my conversations with him about the country, he loves it. He's got golf courses there, and he is just the most massive admirer of the Queen. He just thinks she's the most amazing person on earth. Some of this he got from his mother, who was a very staunch royalist. But for Trump to meet the Queen, I can't imagine there's anybody else in the world that Trump would rather meet than the Queen. So he is going to be very, very happy. But I wonder, given that we have the Mayor of London and the leader of the opposition and groups getting together to try and stop Trump, I wonder how they feel about the President of the USA meeting the Queen. I think whether you like Trump or not, personally, he is the President of the USA, and it is right and appropriate that he should meet the Queen. After all, the Queen hasn't been critical of him in a way that Theresa May has, over and over and over. So let me ask you, do you think, as I do, this is great news that Trump's going to meet the Queen of England? And if you think, no, he doesn't deserve it, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, no, it is right and proper, it would be a huge insult for him not to meet the Queen, then text to 84850. And I particularly want to hear from you. If you're one of those people who wants to be part of the Stop Trump movement, you know, are you somebody who's planning to protest against his visit? If you are, let me know. You can ring me. Equally, you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. I'm live from New York City. I get immediately a text that says, it's only good news for Trump, says Andy. Well, it is good news for Trump. Nigel, if Trump is welcomed to meet Her Majesty, I will stop standing for the national anthem. Anonymous. It's great news that Donald will meet the Queen. I think he should get the red carpet and be welcome, says Pauline from Shropshire. Can't wait for Trump to meet Liz. I'm pretty sure he will have much more respect for Liz than the appeaser at number 10, says Mark in Islington. Well, what do you think? Do you think it's a good thing that Trump is coming to this country and is going to meet the Queen? Or do you think that we're honouring somebody who, in your view, frankly, doesn't deserve it? And I find this really interesting because if you think about Macron, President Macron of France, I mean, his political views are diametrically opposed to Trump's on absolutely, virtually everything. And yet, it was Bastille Day when Trump was invited to Paris. He was given the red carpet treatment, and that has led to really quite a good relationship on a personal level between Macron and between the president. The fact that so far he hasn't even been to our country, I think, is a nonsense. But I know there are many of you who feel very strongly against this president, and I'm keen to hear from you. Let's ask Christine in Canterbury, a new caller to this show, what she thinks. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, Nigel. Great to speak to you. Absolutely 100% pleased that Trump will actually meet the Queen. I think it's great news. I've always been a Trump fan anyhow.
Have you?
And I don't think it could go any better for him.
Why have you always been a Trump fan, Christine? Is that in politics, or did you look at him before when he was a businessman?
Look at him before, because it was all when UKIP started, and we both joined UKIP, and we fought for Brexit every weekend on a stall, my husband and I.
Yeah.
And we've followed him since, and he's a very, very strong man. And what I like about him is that he's a businessman, and he doesn't give us gobbledygook. We can understand what he says, and he means what he says, and he does what he says. And
why do so many people, Christine? I mean, I'm listening very carefully to what you're saying. Why do so many people find him offensive?
I think a lot of people are just too precious.
Okay.
A lot of the females are very precious, if I may say that. I mean, you've just got to... The thing is, things have changed over the years. He's a 70-odd-year-old man.
He was 72 last week, yeah.
But things... I'm the same age as well. I'm just over 70 as well. And when we was younger, people said and did things, and you just ignored them. Now, you say and think anything, you've got a lawsuit.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. People do want to take offence, and they do so very easily. Christine, you're happy he's coming. I thank you for your call. John is calling from Shepherd's Bush, another new caller to this show. Good evening, John.
Hello, good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Welcome to the show. What's your view on Trump coming to meet the Queen?
I think there is no problem with Trump meeting the Queen. After all, the Queen has met the King of Saudi Arabia. And in Saudi Arabia, they behead gays, they stone people, they flog people. And there was no great controversy when the Queen met people from Saudi Arabia, and she's met other dictators before. Trump has not done anything bad from what I can see so far. And it's just a big hype for Trump. I don't get it. I don't understand.
So why, John, do some people get so... they get so upset by Trump, he almost drives them mad.
This is what I do not understand. I'm trying to figure out what has Trump done to deserve this. The American people clearly support Trump. He's the president. He's been voted in democratically by the American people. Why are people against someone who's been voted in? He's not inherited the throne. He's not done anything that is bad at all. What is he? He's not killed people. He's not sent American troops bombing people like Bush done, and anything like that. So I'm not sure why are people so against Trump when he's done nothing.
Well, it's a funny one, John. It's a funny one, John, because some of the things that Trump does, and he gets viciously attacked for, Obama did very much the same things, and no one seemed to protest. And the point about some of the Arab leaders that have been to meet the Queen is true. I also remember Emperor Hirohito from Japan coming to meet the Queen, whose wartime record was, shall we say, questionable. John, I don't get it either. I thank you for your call. What does Ross in Brighton think? Good evening, Ross.
Oh, hello. Well, one thing I'd like to say is I think the President of the United States has absolutely got every need to see the Queen and see our heads of state, whoever they are. I do not agree with everything that Donald Trump does. I don't agree with everything. However, the one thing he does do is when he does something, he actually does it. And if Theresa May did exactly the same thing, then maybe we'd be in a better situation.
Well, I've been saying that for a long time. A lot of our callers have been saying that for a long time. And, of course, Boris... it was a sort of leaked conversation, Ross, wasn't it, of Boris at a dinner the other week, saying that maybe if Trump was handling Brexit, we'd make better progress. Exactly. Yeah, you're right, Ross. I think, one thing that he has achieved, he made a set of promises to the American people, and he's doing his...
with them.
That's right. That's right. And that, I think, is why his popularity rating right now amongst Republican voters is even higher than Ronald Reagan's was.
When the vote came out.
Even when Ronald Reagan's was at this stage of the presidency. So he is certainly, with Republican voters, doing very, very well indeed. The other side don't like him very much. But hey, do you think, Ross, because I've been supporting Trump, very much from the start.
Well, I've watched you on television. And
It's been a very tough place to be, even if at the time there were many in UKIP.
It's not politically correct, is it?
No, a lot of people in UKIP criticise me for doing it. Do you think, as time's gone on, there's maybe a bit more respect for Trump in the country than perhaps people realise?
I think, well, with everything from North Korea to taking China on, he's standing up for his own country, and whether or not I agree with some of his policies is nothing to do with it, because I'm not an American. If I was an American, then it would be a whole different ball game to me. But he does what he said he'd do. He's standing up for the steel industry. He's taking on China. It
is fascinating, isn't it? Ross, it is, you know, watching him, the way he operates, it's fascinating. He's doing what he said. Ross, I thank you. Lisa says, I never knew he was half Scottish. Well, he is, Lisa. Believe you me. Yvonne says, I don't suppose the Queen will be able to refuse to meet him, but I hope she can't stand him, really. Well, who knows how he's going to get on with the Queen. I know for him, it'll be a very, very big personal moment. Angela says that's brilliant news. A smack in the mouth for Mayor Khan then. I wonder, is Mayor Khan going to protest Trump coming to London to meet the Queen? It'll be very interesting. I doubt it. Rob says Trump is welcome to meet my Queen. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC, and it's now 7:15. Donald Trump is coming to meet the Queen next month, no doubt to be offered a cup of tea. Is it a good thing? Do you agree with me that it's great news that the President is going to meet the Queen, or are you one of those who thinks, no, this shouldn't be happening, we should be protesting, he shouldn't be coming to the country at all? Because there are a considerable number of people out there who really do genuinely believe that. I'm keen to hear from you. The last 48 hours have been, for Trump, I think, some of the toughest of his presidency. A wave of illegal migrants trying to get into the country across the Mexican border. The place, of course, where he wants to build the wall, but he needs to get Congress to sanction the money to do it. And Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, has put in place a zero-tolerance policy. And what you've seen are family separations, because the adults who are crossing the border illegally are deemed to be criminals, are facing charges, and the children are taken away from them. This has led to the most enormous row, not just in America from the Democrats, but coming actually from quite a few within the Republican Party as well. It's led to Theresa May criticising the President. Mind you, Theresa May always criticises the President. Goodness knows what the atmosphere is going to be like between the two of them when he comes over next month. And Trump made an announcement this afternoon. This is what he said.
We want to keep families together. It's very important. I'll be signing something in a little while that's going to do that.
So a change is coming. A change is coming, and those families, whether they're awaiting asylum hearings, whether they're awaiting charges, those families will now be kept together. I do find, again, this story very interesting, because, you see, when President Obama was in office back in 2014, he was putting children in detention centres. It didn't last for very long, but he was doing it. And yet, I didn't hear the international outcry, the horror expressed. And that's because people thought Obama was nice, and anything that Trump does, they simply want to jump down his neck. Is what Trump's today, is it a climb down? No, because it wasn't a policy that he invented himself. I think actually it's quite smart. I think he's able to show, look, we're going to be tough. We're not going to let people in across this border, but we can be humane about it at the same time. I think it's a smart thing to do. I do fear for him, if he hadn't done it, he may have faced some problems in the House of Representatives or indeed in the Senate. But it is the big story dominating the news here in America. Andrea says, poor Scottish people to have Trump as part of your history. I don't know. I mean, the descendant of somebody from the Western Isles becoming President of America. It's not bad, really, you know. V says the Queen has met nastier leaders than Trump, so why not Trump? V, that is most certainly true. Simon is calling from Tyneside. Good evening, Simon.
Good evening, Nigel. You all right?
I'm all right. So are you happy that Donald Trump's going to take tea with the Queen?
Absolutely not in the slightest. And I'm travelling all the way down from Tyneside, so I'll be in London on the 13th, 14th and 15th to protest at every opportunity to his visit, not just to the Queen, but to this country.
OK. Were you protesting against Obama when he came?
No, not at all.
Why not? I mean, Simon, he supported the death penalty, an increased military surge in Afghanistan.
I think you support the death penalty, don't you?
No, I never have, actually, but I'm asking you why you weren't protesting against Obama. I mean, and particularly, Simon, as Obama was putting children in detention centres. Why weren't you protesting Obama?
No, can I just point out something? There is a clear difference between Obama and Donald Trump, not just in terms of the way that they're presented in the media, but in terms of the way that they actively treat people. Donald Trump comes out and he's an out-and-out racist, despite being part of the Dreamer generation himself, coming over from Scotland and then becoming an American and then becoming the American president. Yes, that is a bit of a success story. But actually, the way that he's done that and then the way he treats other Dreamer children is absolutely appalling. And what I'm really concerned about, to be honest with you, Donald, is the message that it sent about this sent out to the rest of the country about the fact that the Queen, who's supposed to be entirely politically impartial, is just about to do exactly what people said Trump did with Kim Jong-un, and kind of like give him the credibility by meeting him.
All right. So Simon, when the Queen...
Sorry, Nigel, just 2 seconds. I just want to finish my point, if that's all right. Thank
you.
Go on. So I think already there's a huge feeling within the country about the distance between between the Queen and the royal family and the rest of the populace, and I think this will only drive a further wedge in, because what she's going to be doing is she's going to be legitimising his racism and the caging of children, like the actively ripping apart children from their families. And it was said today, one of the ICE guys, the immigration service people, said that there may be some children that are never replaced with their parents. Now, I don't know what you want to say about Obama, and you can keep going back to that if you want, and I can check out that.
But I don't understand, Simon, why you've got these double standards.
The what, sorry?
I don't understand why you've got these double standards. I mean, do you protest? Do you protest, Simon?
They'll never be placed back with their
No, and that's why the President has announced today, Simon, he's changing the policy. But, Simon, do you protest? Do you protest when Arab leaders turn up?
Just one more second.
Simon, you're obsessed with Trump, aren't you?
What, sorry?
You seem to be obsessed with Trump, not the wrongdoings of other world leaders.
I will stand outside of the Saudi Arabian embassy with a placard. I will stand outside of the Israeli embassy with a placard demonstrating human rights abuses of both countries, as well as Russia. I'm not afraid to call out human rights abuses. And what has gone over the last 72 hours that you are trying to justify and say is okay is quite frankly disgusting, and we should be doing everything that we can to distance ourselves from that, instead of Theresa May saying, oh, it's concerning or it's worrying.
Simon, I think in some ways you're right. In some ways you're right, Simon. Obama's policies were horrible, which is why the President has now made this liberal move today. I just don't get this. I mean, do you actually think, Simon, that he shouldn't come to our country at all? Hello?
I totally don't think he should come at all. I don't think we should legitimise his presidency in the slightest. He will take absolute advantage of us over every kind of trade deal that you seem to pin your hopes on, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, yes, we'll get these things. He's just trying to entirely wreck the world's economy by throwing on these trade sanctions and these...
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Simon. I was going to save this for later on in the programme, but let me try this on you now. OK, today it has been announced that the German Car Manufacturers Association have called for all import tariffs for cars between the European Union and the US, and the other way round, to be abolished. Why? Because Trump pointed out that there's something totally unfair in the trade relationship between America and the USA. And so, yes, he puts tariffs on steel and aluminium. He acts tough. But actually, what he said all along is we need to have a fairer arrangement. And that's because American cars that are sent to Germany are charged 10%, whereas European German cars that are sent to America are charged 2.5%. And here we have, Simon, a massive... Hang on, let me finish. Here we have today a massive victory for the President, because he's got the German car manufacturers to argue for what he's argued for all along. So you see, actually, he's rather an effective negotiator, isn't he?
Can you just let me ask one question, please?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is there may be some disparity. I don't know. We could spend some time looking into it, and no doubt you could come up with figures, and other people could come up with figures that don't necessarily agree. But do you not think that you need to think about your own country much more than you need to think about America, because these trade tariffs apply to us as part of the EU, and he will probably continue to do these when we are not part of the EU against the United Kingdom.
Simon, here we've got the President's initiative. The President's initiative has now been picked up by the German Car Manufacturers Association. They're taking up the challenge that Trump put down, and now it's with the European Commission to make decisions. As far as my country is concerned, Simon,
they are scared. It's got nothing to do with anything other than the fact that they are scared that they will lose business.
All right, I tell you what, Simon.
It's not about parity. It's about losing business.
I tell you what.
Families at the end of the day.
I'm not going to convince you or change your mind. I understand that, and I get that, and you feel very passionately. Let me ask you something. One last quick question. Is there anything that Trump has done as president that you approve of?
Absolutely nothing.
Right, okay, Simon, thank you. Well, there you are. Some people do feel that way. I wasn't going to convince him. He doesn't think the president should come to the country at all. I think that's crazy. On Twitter, I get, you gotta love the Donald. Can't wait for his visit. Thousands will greet him, says Jackie. That'll be interesting. Trump should meet our Queen. Good news, and I hope Simon, the caller's train, is cancelled, says Liz. Let's go to Lorraine in Chelmsford. Hi, Lorraine.
Hello there, Nigel.
Hi. Well, I'm still reeling from the last caller who doesn't think the president's done anything good at all.
I'm really, really shocked at the bias and the hatred actually that people have for him. I think our media have a lot to stand up for on that, because they've misinformed the country over here and in America. The media has been disgusted. But what I would like to say, I think a lot of it boils down to is those in favour of mass immigration and loss of sovereignty to countries. They believe in a one world with no borders, or those that who want controlled immigration and believe in independent sovereign countries. Trump is a man that wants fair, ordered immigration, and believes in independent, free, sovereign countries, as I do. And I will be there in support of Donald Trump.
Will you?
I think he's a great man. I think it would only have taken somebody with his ego and his personality to have had the bravery and the courage to stand up against the cabal that are actually now running this world.
Lorraine, you have countered the arguments that Simon put and done it very well indeed. I thank you. So there you are. Some people are very pleased that he's coming. Others are filled with horror. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 7:30 in time. Donald Trump is coming to meet the Queen next month. I think it's great news. Not all of you clearly agree. Today in the House of Commons, it's been yet again the Brexit debate, the Brexit votes, and I wonder, as I asked Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, whether perhaps, Theo, I should call you a Brexit interpreter, because it's quite difficult for most folk to follow what's happening here. We understand the government have avoided defeat, or have they secured a real victory?
There's been a fudge, Nigel. I think that's the way.
Oh, not another one.
There's been a fudge, and the Remainers, the Dominic Greaves, have found a way of climbing down, of getting back from the brink without losing face. To explain, David Davis stood up in the House of Commons, this is of course all over a meaningful vote, and said that it actually wasn't up to the government to decide whether a motion put before the House, which would be that the House of Commons had considered the government's stance on Brexit, was unamendable, that it just had to be that singular motion, that MPs couldn't tack on changes to it that might limit Theresa May's hands in or send her back to Brussels to carry out further negotiations. He said that decision was down to the Speaker, John Bercow. Now, the House of Commons, Nigel, is governed by a process called standing orders. They're written into a big book called Erskine May, which sets out exactly what MPs can and cannot do in the House of Commons. And that rule book says that in actual fact, when it comes to amendments to neutral motions, which simply say that the House of Commons has considered a motion, they can't be changed. But it also says, and we also understand from advice that the House of Commons Speaker has been given, that actually those rules can be overridden and if John Bercow wishes to, he could allow MPs to tack on various changes. Now, of course, the only real winner out of all of this, Nigel, and this is the irony of the whole thing, is John Bercow, the Speaker of the House of Commons, MP for Buckinghamshire, big Remainer.
I know.
We've seen the bumper stickers, very rude messages about Brexit and what he really thinks about Brexit. And of course, he's been under threat because he's faced allegations of bullying his staff, of hounding people out of jobs. And I should say they are allegations. And his job was supposed to be under threat. But it's very difficult now to see any circumstance until after Brexit that he leaves. Because in order for that to happen, Labour whips would have to go along with Conservative whips and say that they don't have confidence in him doing the job. And the Labour whips aren't going to do that when it comes down to the fact that when at the final vote, at Brexit, they can actually get through some changes to the government's plans.
So given that the government has kind of won the day here, when we really get to the end of this process, which could be next January, February, something like that, is it possible that the House of Commons can prevent the government from taking us out of the EU on March the 29th? That's the real question, isn't it?
It is the real question, and it's a question to which we will have to wait and see, because, of course, the government is saying that it would be down to the Speaker to make the decision. The Speaker was actually asked this afternoon, John Bercow was asked this afternoon by the Labour MP Paul Farrelly what his interpretation of the rules were, and he turned around and he said to Mr Farrelly, well, let's wait and see when it comes down to it. He didn't actually give him a firm answer.
Don't you think, Theo, that all of these shenanigans actually are putting
they
people...
are shenanigans.
But don't you think it puts people off voting at all? Aren't people watching this just scratching their heads, thinking what the hell is going on?
Philip Davies, the Conservative MP for Shipley, was roundly criticised by his own colleagues because he stood up and he accused the Brexiteers, Nigel, of saying that back in his constituency in Yorkshire, all of his constituents were jumping up and down saying the MPs are trying to frustrate Brexit. They weren't saying that they might be trying to obstruct Brexit. They were really frustrated, according to Philip Davies. And the Remainers, of course, disputed this. But out there, everything that I've explained, if you're listening to it, you might be saying it's difficult to understand. But they're really complex processes that to the outsider may well look as if MPs are really messing about and trying to stop something that was voted on 2 years ago.
And the one thing, Theo, and thank you, Theo Usher, LBC's political editor, for explaining all of that today. The one thing I'm certain of is a majority of the people, however they voted in the referendum, just want the government to get on with it. Theo, thank you. Back to Trump. He's going to meet the Queen. He'll have a cup of tea with her, I expect. I think it's great. Not everyone does. Susan from Basildon is a new caller to this show. Good evening, Susan.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, are you pleased that Trump is coming to this country and will meet the Queen?
I'm pleased he's coming to this country, but I'm not really pleased at all that he's going to meet the Queen. I quite like his straightforwardness. I think you yourself, it's quite clear to me why you would like someone like Trump, because you're pretty straightforward yourself. But I have to say that I think he's more of a businessman than a politician, and I find that he makes rash decisions. What is good about him is that he does seem to think about things. Perhaps his advisors, he's reputed not to like to read very much, and sometimes it does seem to show. But I think he's a man that does speak from the heart. Perhaps too much off the cuff sometimes for somebody with
Susan,
power.
You're right. He's a businessman applying very different principles to politics and political leadership, and that's something.
And it's so noticeable, isn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of the media just sort of can't get their heads around it. And Susan, in some ways, he's a very instinctive person. Yeah, he may not read.
That's why he comes
a huge amount.
If you forget that he isn't a politician, he does come across as rash. Whereas in the business field, he would have to be just on his feet and making those rash decisions with his instincts and with his experience as a businessman. He clearly knows how to negotiate in business, and that is, I think, that's good for the whole world. Actually, that we can do business with somebody like him, who is very straightforward. But when it comes to him meeting the Queen, the Queen is supposed to be apolitical, and I think that it's right that not only Theresa May, but the whole of our cabinet, as many of our politicians as possible, have dialogue with Trump and make him welcome here as a statesman on the political side. But really, there's a lot of people in this country. Trump's chant, all through his campaign was America first, America first. Now, I actually think that we're all beginning to say, and it's making it a bit dangerous on the world stage, we're all over the world beginning to say us first, us first, us first.
Oh, Italy, absolutely. I mean, the new Italian government.
Doing it, it's happening. It's an explosion of us first all over the world. And so I don't think it's fair to say that Trump is destabilising sort of international economy. I think it's going to be. I think it's already happening, and I think it's going to continue to happen. Everything is very unstable, and I don't think any of us know what's going to calm it down.
Susan, we're living through a period of change. We had those results of Brexit and Trump in 2016, and when Macron won in France, the international order thought, that's okay, we're returning to normal. I've argued ever since Trump was elected that the revolution is still rolling. It's rolling out across the West, and I suspect we're going to see a lot more change before this is over. Susan, I thank you. Susan, feeling the Queen should probably stay a bit more apolitical. Andy on Twitter says, does a state visit not require a statesman? Okay, Andy, I've got it. Nigel, I can't take Trump seriously, and I'm surprised people actually do. I thought he was a spitting image puppet. He's not strong, he acts tough, but he's thin-skinned and insecure, and it looks ridiculous, says Matt in Sidcup. Well, Matt, a lot of people actually find it very, very entertaining, because he stands up and says what he thinks. I'd have a lot more respect for these people's views if they were just a little bit more consistent and honest. If you genuinely hate democracy, then fine, be honest about it. Well, there's a lot of that around, isn't there? A lot of people who don't think he should have been elected, don't think he should be treated as a legitimate politician. I find that, I have to say, frankly, bizarre. What does Mick in Chesterfield think? Good evening, Mick.
Hi, Nigel. I think a couple of things. Firstly, I think we need to all calm down a little bit and remember that the President is not coming to the UK as Donald Trump in a personal capacity. He's coming as the President of the United States of America, one of our biggest allies, traditionally, and we should respect that office of which he's the holder.
No, I agree with that totally.
Yeah, particularly if we want Mr. Trump's government to give any credence and any respect to the idea of trading more with us post-Brexit. The other thing that I think, where the Queen's concerned, the Queen has had what must have been the vilest experience of having to shake the hand of Martin McGuinness, who was not unconnected with the
death of Mountbatten. Yeah,
exactly,
absolutely.
Her relative. So meeting Donald Trump is going to be an absolute walk in the park for her. She'll be fine. She'll cope with it.
Yeah. And look at some of the Arab leaders, Mick, that she's been made to meet and give state dinners to, and the beastly things they've done. And I just think, frankly, the liberal media, those on the left, they're getting wildly exercised over Donald Trump to a point that it's frankly ridiculous. And I have to say, if you watch CNN, I mean, it's 24 hours a day of simply attacking Donald Trump. I don't get it. Mick, I thank you, Mick. I've got to go. I've got to move on. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:45. Trump is coming to meet the Queen. I think it's great. Some others don't think he should even be allowed in the country. Annie on Facebook's being helpful. She says, Nigel, if the Don has nowhere to stay, I will put him up. I'm sure he will bear that in mind. A lot of you on the lines want to give your opinion. I'll try and rattle through a few. Andrew in Kingston upon Hull, a new caller to the show. Good evening, Andrew.
Hello, yes. I am from Hull. I'm just trying to echo the guy from North East a couple of callers ago, but from a different angle. I do believe that he should be brought here. We have seen despots and we're a despotic country anyway. We all are. There's nobody gets away with what we all have done in Europeans, Americans, destroyed lots of people.
Do you mean back in history, Andrew, yeah?
Yes, absolutely in history, but not just history, now. Actually happening now.
There's Libya, there's Iraq, there's quite a few things we've got wrong. Yeah, no, I get that, Andrew. I get that.
So can I finish then?
Go on.
So, at the end of the day, none of us can look in our conscience and think we've been good. The fact is, this and think we've been good. The fact is, this particular man, I've seen him, I've listened to him, and I've seen it before. My grandfather did 2 wars to fight a man that I see in the White House. Obama, those pictures I saw as well, yes, he was locking people up. They were unaccompanied children. He changed the law in April to take children away from parents. That is a basic human right. It is written in law.
Well, Andrew, today...
After the war, listen to me.
Andrew, hang on.
After the war, we signed a treaty to not do this. And if we appease this president, you are kicked. I've lost it. You are culpable.
Andrew, today the president today has used executive powers in exceptional circumstances to try and change this policy, all right? And yes, Obama did put children in detention centres. Andrew, do you think it's a good thing that the president today is changing the law?
Sorry?
Do you think it's a good thing that he's changing the law?
There was no law. I've looked at every bit for the last 50 hours.
So there's an executive order going in today, Andrew, yeah?
And lies, and you propagate those lies. You are a disgusting human being.
Very good, Andrew. Have a drink on me. Enjoy the evening. Well, there we are. That is good, open, rational, democratic debate. The Queen has met dozens of tyrants, I get on Twitter. One more won't matter. Thank you, Carol. Let's go to Dave in Stevenage. Dave, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I don't know if I should be talking to such a dreadful man.
Oh, well, that's okay. Don't worry. There's plenty of people think that. But look, I mean, Dave, I have supported Trump. He is a Democrat. He does actually care about people.
Yes.
And yeah, they're getting tough in all sorts of ways. But it's almost as if there's this invention that Trump is a tough president doing X, Y, and Z. Actually, Obama did many things that were very, very similar. And it's that kind of double standard of the argument that really annoys me, Dave. But hey,
yes,
that's me. What do you think?
Well, he is the leader of the free world. Of course, we should welcome him here with open arms and give him every ceremonial duty that we give to other less deserving people. And he uses business principles in his presidency and makes decisions which it would be nice if some of our leaders actually did the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I rather agree with that. Do you think, Dave, that Theresa May should stop constantly criticising him?
Yes. I mean, he's got to get on with the man. Get on with it. Why don't you copy some of his principles and get Brexit sorted out? Never mind looking at what Trump's doing. And the last thing I want to say, Nigel, these children that have been separated from their parents, well, if you don't want that to happen, don't cross the border illegally.
Yeah, I'm going to say, absolutely. All the blame for this is being put on the US authorities. They are willfully trying illegally to cross into the USA.
Yes.
And that point seems to have been completely lost on this side of the pond in this debate. But, Dave, you're absolutely right, because they know what is going to happen. Dave, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Trump is doing right. He's open and straight to the world about his actions and what he thinks. The Queen will meet President Trump with pleasure, dignity and good manners. I wouldn't be surprised if Harry and Meghan were there with the Queen too. Our Queen always represents our country with dignity and good form. Many many should follow her lead. Caroline from Hampshire, that is true, and that is what Trump thinks. Trump has the hugest admiration for the Queen. I know that because I've been in conversation with him about it. Let's ask Rupert in Maidenhead what he makes of it all. Good evening, Rupert.
Good evening, Nigel. How are we?
We're all right, thank you. I can't quite fathom, Rupert. I mean, I know there are political leaders that we can like and dislike, but it seems the hatred, the prejudice some have for Trump, is just almost off the Richter scale.
Well, Nigel, you know I'm obviously that Corbynista living in Theresa Pisa's catchment in Maidenhead, and I'm a Ramona. But I have to question with you, not Brexit, but your commitment to Trump over this. Because let's say this was the president of Europe who was like this. I kind of feel, Nigel, you would be on the shoe would be on the other foot.
Oh, no. Actually, I would like Mr. Juncker to come to our country more often. I think the more people listen to Juncker, what he wants to do with the European project, what he wants to do with nation-state democracy. In fact, I'd have personally paid for him to be here for the whole referendum and we'd have won it by a whacking majority.
Okay, well, so let me go down another way. So let me...
Okay, go on.
So my point is this, Nigel. With Brexit, you're saying we want to be an independent country, united, making our own decisions, standing strong and tall. We are Great Britain. God save our gracious Queen.
Absolutely.
Right? And now you're saying, no, we need to stand next to our closest ally in this. We need to stand next to Trump.
No, Rupert, there is no inconsistency in this at all. Look, we are part of a NATO alliance. We have been, for 70 years. I happen to think that it's a rather important relationship. I happen to think the Atlantic ought to get narrower in terms of trade too. Doesn't mean I want to sacrifice a shred of our independence or our rights of self-government, but the one thing, Rupert, that Brexit gives us is a chance to reposition our relationships in the world, and I personally believe that there is an English-speaking diaspora out there with whom we have much shared history, many similar types of law, contract law, legal systems, and I just think it represents, Rupert, for us overall, a great opportunity.
Okay, well, let's go back to, we both disagree on Theresa the Appeaser, but let's go back, because a similar thing happened under Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. So Ronald Reagan invaded a Commonwealth country. Margaret Thatcher spoke to Ronald Reagan, not in the media, not on Twitter, because it wasn't around back then, but said, enough is enough. And that relationship got stronger. And Theresa the Appeaser needs to come out now, ring up Trump, get on Twitter, the Batman signal, whatever she wants to do, and say, whatever's going on in Mexico, there are children in cages crying. You are the president of the free world.
But he's changed it all. Rupert, Obama was doing similar things, and Trump today has changed that. He's changing the law, Rupert.
Well,
Rupert, I'm going to let you go. Time is running out. I've got a very, very quick 30 seconds for Lisa in Camden. Lisa, good evening.
Hello, hi. I mean, I cannot believe you're trying to package what Trump is doing as he's changing the law. This is something he's advocated. And for you to draw parallels with Obama, that is completely untrue.
No, it's not.
You like the guy. I think, I understand you favour what he's doing, but what he's doing is cruel and wicked.
But he's changed, Lisa, he's changing the law.
No, he has to, because everybody, absolutely everybody, is disgusted with his behaviour. Because you don't tear children away from their families. You just don't do that. That's the work. That's the.
Well, I tell you what we do in this country. If you arrest parents for being criminals, the children would be separated. Lisa, I'm out of time. I'm really sorry. I'll be back tomorrow night at 7. A really heated debate tonight on President Trump, as ever. At 10 later on this evening, it'll be Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thanks very much.